We are pleased to be joined at this time by the Honorable Alex Padilla, California Secretary of State. All of you from Los Angeles certainly know Alex as the former City Council President, elected to the Council in 1999 at the young age of 26, and former California State Senator from 2006 to 2014, and also past President of NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. Sworn in as the new California Secretary of State in January this year, the only statewide Latino elected official currently, please welcome the Honorable Alex Padilla, who will introduce our honoree. Alex.
Thank you, Mickey. You've been a good friend for many, many years, and at every turn, you're there to help and support and encourage, so thank you for everything. Good afternoon, everybody. As our friend, Mickey's a friend of everybody in this room, has said, everybody in this room is a VIP. But some were selected for introduction because you were elected to office or some role that you played in this luncheon. And there's one gentleman who I'm going to take a point of personal privilege to introduce, Mickey, before I get to my duty of introducing the honoree. And that is, when I was sworn in as California Secretary of State, we actually had two swearing-in ceremonies. On January 5th in Sacramento, I was sworn in by Governor Jerry Brown. But hey, we're Latinos, right? We also have to have the home celebration. And so that Saturday, January 10th, a couple hundred of our closest friends gathered at Union Station, where we recreated that swearing-in ceremony. And I was administered the oath of office by the same individual who registered me to vote. And that individual was my high school government teacher, recently retired, Mr. Alex Ressa. Please take a bow. Another story for the Ibarra collection. But it's my honor and privilege today to introduce today's honoree, Maria Elena Salinas. Many of us know her as the co-anchor of the highly rated Noticiero Univision, the nightly network newscast, as well as co-host of the news magazine, Aquí y Ahora. Her career includes many a high-profile interview from several heads of state of different Latin American countries, as well as rebel leaders, dictators, and as far as the U.S. is concerned, every United States president since Jimmy Carter. This is Los Angeles, and this is her home. She was raised in Los Angeles to parents who were immigrants from Mexico. I can certainly relate to that. And her journalistic career as a television reporter began with KMEX, Channel 34, in 1981. Now, in baseball years, we'll remember that as the year of Fernando Mania. Okay? It didn't take long. By 1987, she assumed the anchor chair of Noticiero Univision, another good year for the Dodgers, by the way. And she's made history throughout her career. Because this is more a political gathering than not, we can recognize the groundbreaking news coverage she's had, including participating in the first ever bilingual national Democratic presidential candidate debate on Hispanic issues in 2004. Round of applause. That was surpassed in 2007 when she co-hosted the first ever Democratic and Republican presidential candidate forums in Spanish on the Univision network. In a career that has taken her from the White House to the rough streets of Baghdad to sitting with A-list celebrities and everywhere in between, she's known for her unique style of hard-hitting reporting with incredible storytelling on a variety of issues, from politics to immigration to women's issues and international affairs. She hasn't won, she has earned no less than 6 Emmys, the Walter Cronkite Award, and the first Lifetime Achievement Award by the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences awarded to a Latina. So clearly a distinguished career. And in her spare time, has found time to pen a book. Her memoir titled Yo soy la hija de mi padre, una gran vida de secretos, has won critical acclaim. She's also the official spokesperson for Ya es Hora, a national citizenship and civic engagement campaign that has partnered with NALEO, and now as Secretary of State, we hope to dovetail with those efforts, and communicates regularly with more than 1 million followers on her various social media platforms. Please welcome Los Angeles' own, today's honoree, Elena Salinas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very, very honored to be here. You mentioned, Alex, 1981 is when I began, and I always say when I started, I'd say, well, I was only 8 years old, but that's not working anymore. So I just don't say dates anymore. We don't talk about dates anymore. When you look at the list of speakers who have participated in these luncheons, it's a really very impressive list. The majority of them are accomplished politicians or community leaders, so it's always very odd when you're included as a journalist in this kind of a list, because there's an unwritten rule for journalists that we're not supposed to become the news. We are supposed to be on the sidelines reporting the news, being witnesses to history. The people who speak at these events are the people that I interview, whose success stories I cover and I tell. So needless to say, I'm honored, and I'm definitely flattered that you invited me. Mickey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for considering me. Well, they asked me to talk about some of the challenges that I have faced in my career. You like to use the word obstacles, but to me, obstacles and the worst obstacles are the ones that we have in our minds, the ones that tell us, no puedo, we can't, it's too hard, it's too difficult. So those obstacles, we clear it out of our mind and they don't exist anymore. But there are challenges, and there are many challenges. So when I started thinking about it, I said, okay, what challenges have I faced? There's 2 different sets. One is as a woman in the news biz, and the other one is as a Latina journalist. As a woman, there's one clear answer. The biggest challenge is dealing with machismo, sexism, double standard, however you want to call it, but it does exist in our industry, like it does in our culture, unfortunately. It's true that women have to work twice as hard to get half of the recognition that men do, women that work in Spanish language media have to work 3 times as hard to get 1/3 of the recognition that men do. But the good news is that we can, because we have that God-given ability as women to multitask and to do many things at the same time. And also, we learned it at home. I know, at least I did. My father was a brilliant man. He was a wonderful, loving, caring man, but he was kind of old school. He believed that the woman's place is in the home, and we have to understand that he was born in 1909, so it's a sign of the times. He believed that it was important to educate his daughters so that they could make a good wife for someone one day. Yes, he taught us morals and he taught us values, things that were very, very important to him. And on the other hand, there was my mother who worked and worked and worked and worked. She was a hardworking woman. She was a seamstress. She worked long hours and behind a sewing machine and a cutting table, and was the best mom that anyone could ever want to have. We were very poor at the time, but somehow we never felt that there was anything missing in our lives. We led a happy life. When I have brought my daughters to Los Angeles and take them to the place where I used to live, it's right across the street from Sports Arena on Figueroa. As I was coming here, I stopped in Figueroa, and that's where I had to make a left turn, because I like to come to LA and drive. It just makes me feel like I'm at home. I don't care if I get stuck on the 405. I don't care if there's smog or traffic. It just feels good. It just feels like I'm home. When I saw Figueroa, I thought, my God, that's where I grew up. That house we used to call, and Mickey knows because he read my book, La Casa de las Cucarachas. It was an apartment that when I would wake up at night in the middle of the night from my closet, because my bedroom was a walk-in closet. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, one for my parents, one for my sisters, and the walk-in closet was for mine. So if I woke up in the middle of the night, went to the kitchen, boom, cucarachas por todos lados. So now the Casa de las Cucarachas is a parking lot. But still, when I drive by there, I have those memories. And I really thank my mother for never, allowing us to realize that we were poor, that we were missing anything, that there was anything lacking in our lives. We were just very happy, and we had very good example from them. Growing up, I guess, in a home with an intellectual dad and a hardworking mother kind of prepared me for what I do, for a career in journalism. I inherited from her a strong work ethic, and I inherited from my dad a social conscience. I've always said that women can do everything that men can do, and we do it better because we do it in high heels. If not, really. I mean, can you imagine Jorge Ramos being pushed out of Trump's news conference wearing stilettos? I mean, I don't know if he would handle that very gracefully. Jorge has a fight with Trump, and I'm the one that gets the hate mail. And they tell me, go back to your country, go back to Mexico. So here I am in LA, the city where I was born, in the community, that's right, in the community where I was raised, in a country that I love and I owe loyalty to. It's incredible that I still have to prove that I'm an American. I'm an American. I'm a Mexican-American, hyphenated or not. I'm an American. I'm as American as apple pie. Even if I eat the apple pie after a nice plate of chilaquiles, which is my favorite breakfast. Anyway, so this leads me to the challenge that I have faced as a Latina journalist. 34 years ago, I started working at Channel 34. 34, the magic number. It's a good number. Things were very different then than they are now. Some are, some are not. KMEX was a small station, considered by many low-budget, low-quality station that no one watched except for recently arrived immigrants. So as a rookie reporter, I covered politics. And there are some people in this room who remember that and who I interviewed during that time. And when I covered politics, I remember going out and trying to get interviews, and the kind of response that I would get, especially when it was national interviews with a national campaign, it was, "You're from Channel 30 what?" They didn't know we existed, unfortunately. And the picture became clear to me when I realized that they didn't know we existed because we were not participating in the political process. As many of you know, in the early 80s in Los Angeles, although we were 25% of the population, we had no political representation. Not in City Hall, not in the Board of Supervisors, not on the Board of Education. That's why when Mickey introduced the council members that are here, really, I got chills. Because I thought, my God, I remember how it was exactly that situation that marked my life, and I will talk about it in a minute, that marked me and that really set the tone for what my career would be. And here we are, several years later, having a room full of representatives from this city. I'm so happy to see that. So, when a seat opened all of a sudden, it was in the early 80s, some of you might remember, I don't know if it was 82 or 83, but a seat opened in the city council. There was a possibility of a Latino being elected. There was a Latino running. So I went out and I did interviews on the street. It was in the Boyle Heights area, I remember. I interviewed 16 people, and out of those 16 people, 15 people were not voting. They didn't know there was an election. They weren't participating for whatever reason. They weren't registered. They weren't legal. For whatever reason, but they were not voting. So I went back and I told my news director, Pete Moraga, que en paz descanse, that I couldn't do the story because no one was participating in the election, so how could I do a story about who they were going to vote for if they weren't going to vote? And he explained that your story is right there in front of you. We don't have political representation because we're not participating, because Latinos feel disenfranchised from mainstream America. So it didn't only give me a good journalistic lesson, but that incident marked my career. It set the tone for what I knew would be my mission, the political empowerment of Latinos and the advancement of my community. I knew from that moment on that my reporting had to go above and beyond the daily news. My reporting had to include informing Latinos of their rights, but also of their responsibilities in what was to many their newly adopted country. There were about 14 million Latinos in the US at the time. Fast forward 3 decades, and we are now 55 million Latinos. Los Angeles is, correct me if I'm wrong, about half Latino, about 50% Latino. We have plenty of political representation at all levels. KMEX is now the #1 station in the country, regardless of language. I'm no longer the rookie reporter trying to explain to politicians why Spanish language media is relevant. Yes, we've come a long way. We in Spanish language media have grown hand in hand with the Latino community. No more low quality, low budget stations that nobody watches. We compete with mainstream media in quality and in quantity of viewership. Our audiences have become more sophisticated and more demanding, and we don't want to keep it all to ourselves. We wanted to share it with those who are not lucky enough to speak Spanish or understand Spanish. That's why now Univision News has the daily brief in English. If you are interested, by the way, in receiving every day through email, the daily brief in English, it's a summary of the most important stories of the day that we cover in Univision. You can apply univisiondaily.com. Univision Daily, that's my commercial for the day, univisiondaily.com. You know, there's so many people, including many of you, or most of you in this room, that have worked so hard for so long to defend the rights of Latinos, to elevate our image, to highlight our many contributions, to be recognized as the integral part of society. And it's worked. Look at how many of you are here representing big corporations. How many of you are here as elected officials or appointed officials? How many of you are running a business or leading a foundation? Now, high school dropout rates among Latino students have dramatically dropped, and more Latinos are going to college thanks to the work that many of you have done. In politics, our influence has been felt also. I now see, and I've seen in the past couple of decades, how just about every major campaign includes staffers to work with the Latino community for Latino outreach, or to deal, that's an interesting word, with Spanish language media. I'm not saying that they love us now, or that we have a love affair with the campaigns and with the politicians, but they are paying attention to us because they know that they can't win an election without Latinos. And they know that the best way to get to Latinos is by having respect for them and by having respect for their language. As you can see, what happened the other day when Jeb Bush spoke Spanish and was criticized the following day by another candidate that shall remain nameless, it died right away. He said, no, they probably told him, you can't get into that one, you better be careful. You know, there is so much to celebrate and so much to be proud of. Unfortunately, it's not all good news. We've been reporting these days how a disproportionate number of Latinos are arrested and end up being victims of police brutality. Tens of thousands of families have been separated through deportation. Thousands of Central American kids have been separated and have been jailed, detained at the border. Sadly, there's one thing that through all of our hard work we have not been able to overcome or to change, and that is racism. You know, we don't really have to worry about that guy who comes out and says immigrants are criminals, drug dealers, and rapists. He's eventually going to disappear. I'm convinced. I'll bet on it. I'll put my money on it. But we do have to worry about the millions who buy it, who support him, and who agree with him, and who keep him at the levels in the polls that he is. He's not there because of fake numbers. He's there because there's actual people who believe what he's saying and who have those pent-up feelings inside and think that now it's okay to verbalize them and to show them. Those are the people we need to worry about. The political climate for Latinos has definitely suffered a setback, and that represents a new challenge for you as community leaders, and also for me as a journalist and for many of my colleagues in Spanish language media. You, of course, need to continue leading by example, and I, as a journalist, need to continue to denounce injustice and oppression when I see it, calling prejudice and discrimination by its name, to question authority, and to condemn abuse. I can't be a bystander, and I won't. I I need to tell the success stories of people like you in this room. And I also need to tell the stories of those who are victims and are rejected by society. You know, this has been a good year for me journalistically. I've been very lucky to have won 3 awards, a Gracie Award, a Walter Cronkite Award, and a Peabody Award. And now I'm nominated for an Emmy Award. Thank you. And it's all for a program that I did last year on the children's border crisis, entre el abandono y el rechazo, between abandonment and rejection. By the way, that's a name that one of my bosses didn't like. He said, no, it's too long, no, it's too convoluted, no, people won't understand. Well, when I came back from my journey to Central America, I knew that that was the only name, because when you talk about these kids, you understand that they are entre el abandono y el rechazo, abandoned by society, by their governments, sometimes by their families, and rejected in a country that is not willing to take them in and bring them in and open the door to the land of opportunity. But I'm not telling this story to brag about my accomplishments, but because of the important meaning of these awards. You know, the Peabodys are given to stories that matter. It's 17 judges, and they all have to agree. It has to be unanimous. And they all agreed that mine, along with the other awardees, were stories that matter. And as far as the Walter Cronkite Award is concerned, this is what was said about my story. It was balanced and revealing reporting from the point of view, not of politicians, but of families in their countries of origin, which brought viewers face to face with women and children directly affected. This is the kind of story often left out of the immigration debate. And this is what the Walter Cronkite Committee said about my story. So, you know what? While mainstream media was focusing on the political battle at the border with this issue, where politicians were accusing each other, pointing the fingers, accusing each other of causing the crisis, and the children were being put in detention centers or deported, my crew and I went to Guatemala, and we went to Honduras, and we went to El Salvador, and we showed the conditions of violence and poverty and drug wars and gang-infested neighborhoods that drove these kids out of their countries. This was a humanitarian crisis that needed a human face. It wasn't just a political debate. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately about advocacy journalism. I know that we are accused of being advocates. We're not journalists, they say we're advocates, as if it was an insult. You know, like when they call you, you liberal, you are a liberal. And you say, so what? You know, are you trying to insult me? Okay, so when they say you are practicing advocacy journalism, I don't feel insulted by that. I don't feel insulted because wasn't that what they called Ruben Salazar when he reported on the injustice toward Mexican-American community, first in El Paso and then in Los Angeles, many years ago? What an honor to be in the same category as Ruben Salazar. You know, I believe that reporting the trials and tribulations of immigrants is not advocating. It's contributing to a healthy debate on the issues that otherwise would sound like a monologue with everyone accusing Latinos for all the ills of this country. Now, I've been reading a lot about Ruben Salazar to look for some perspective, especially on what's going on right now. And I found an interview that was done by Bob Navarro with Ruben Salazar. When he left his job, when he was a reporter at the LA Times, he left his job as a reporter and went to work for KMEX Channel 34, and they couldn't understand why would he do that? Why would he leave such a reputable, job to go work for a station, like I said before, that nobody watched, low quality, low budget. So this is what he has, this is exchange. What Bob Navarro was telling him during this interview that he had with Ruben Salazar is that he was becoming an advocate because that's what they did in Spanish language TV. They were advocates. So this is the exchange that they had. This is 3 months before Ruben Salazar was killed. Bob Navarro asks, but is advocacy the name of the game? Can you work as a functional day-to-day reporter in the position of advocacy? And this was his response, Ruben. I'm only advocating the Mexican-American community, just like the general media is advocating, really, our economy, our country, our way of life. So I'm just advocating a community within a community, which, by the way, the general community has totally ignored. And so someone must advocate that, because it's easy for the establishment to say, Aren't we all the same? Aren't we all Americans? Well, obviously we're not. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the revolutionary process that we are now. Can you believe that was 45 years ago? 45 years ago, and here we are having the same conversation in this country. Well, some things have changed and some things have not. We're not the same Latin community that we were in the 60s and 70s, or even the 80s when I started my career as a reporter. Hoy sí tenemos voz y voto, y por eso, ahora sí, haremos la diferencia. You know, there's a silver lining to all this and to this climate of immigrant bashing. It has united the community in a way that I have not seen in many, many, many years. Latinos are finally realizing that they have to take control of their destiny. More than ever, I see Latinos motivated to go out and vote. As Alex mentioned, I have been a spokesperson for Yaisora for many, many years, motivating Latinos to come out and become citizens if they qualify, to register to vote, to come out and vote. Like I said, it's been my mission. I've dedicated my whole career to informing and empowering our community, and I feel privileged to have had that opportunity. But my mission is not over. Now we have to start again, but it's okay. I'm not afraid to start over again. I'm not afraid to work. My mama taught me how to work. She gave me a good work ethic. So I'm ready to continue taking on the challenge, and I'm sure that all of you are too. Thank you very much for inviting me. Gracias a los que estuvieron aquí para servirnos.